is sometimes we'll see an event or a situation or a circumstance in the book of Acts, and we'll literally stop at the door of that circumstance. Mm-hmm. We won't see what the opening of that door causes within that nation as a rippling effect, which is Jesus's nation building agenda. We just see, well, he went to Cornelius's house got saved, done, we're finished.
Hello, and welcome to Unlock the Kingdom Within You. This podcast explores the profound truth about what it means to be born into the kingdom, not a religion. On this podcast, we challenge the religious and denominational norms which shackle us from expressing the liberty of Christ by exploring the kingdom, the ecclesia, and citizenship. If you're born into the kingdom but lost in religion, then this channel is just for you. So thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I see leaders of the future shifting gears from being, we talk a lot about the hierarchical system from the top down. I see leaders of the future really becoming, I'm going to coin a phrase here, leading facilitators. In other words, because the nation is built up of citizens who are empowered to be able to do what God has called them to do, I believe that leadership now has to position themselves to help people become that and provide the atmosphere and provide the environment for them to become everything that God is speaking to them about, to help nourish them, to help train them. When we talk about fivefold, to equip the saints for the work, elders governing and protecting them within the framework of them exercising that and learning it and maybe making mistakes along the way. In other words, the leadership of the future has to not only see the body, but be willing to be there to nurture them as they mature in their given calling, purpose, and ministry. And so that's how I see the future leaders. It's going to create a change. That they don't need a crowd; they need those who they can work with, and I think that's a major difference. And what we see today, I think that's going to be a major difference, however.
And I believe also working in concert, not independent of each other, but working in concert and collaboratively with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I absolutely agree with what you both have said. I think for me, when I'm thinking about the type of leadership that connects with that type of future, which builds the society Jesus has in mind, I think the key thing for me is the principle of first among equals, with equals being paramount, because I think that there has been that the first has stood out more importantly than the equals in this context, and I think that's because we are seeing a distorted leadership at the moment, and that distorted leadership is framed around a hierarchy which puts the pastor at the top in a pyramid shape rather than the polarity of eldership, which I think is crucial. Yeah. I then think, interestingly, that the type of leadership we need is definitely more of a patriotistic type of leadership, a leadership which demonstrates sacrifice, not based upon a service and a liturgy, but is sacrificial around the national agenda. It's one that epitomizes what it looks like to put the kingdom first. Yeah, I think right now, kingdom first is often just demonstrated. It's language demonstrated around the efforts you place around the liturgy, rather than the efforts you place around looking after the citizenry for Christ. Which the whole point, Jesus himself, when he talks about his type of patriotism, it's the shepherd that looks after the sheep, and it's demonstrated in that way. And I think that has been lost. I think another quality is about statesmanship. Statesmanship is really important because statesmanship gives us the capacity to leverage influence, which you talked about, Tim, earlier, especially with the citizenry of the world. And I think the continuity of governance. I think that the emphasis of the future, the new leaders arising, is not about how many people I lead. It's about how many people can I bring into a continuity of governance that reflects the kingdom? It's what I said a couple of sessions ago about, the fundamental issue with the father who had the prodigal sons was he did not have sons who he could transfer the continuity of governance to, because they were more concerned about how much they had or how much they didn't have.
Inheritance.
The younger son was more concerned about getting his inheritance, all of his inheritance now, so how much he had. And the older son was more concerned about the fact that he wasn't given much in order to do the things he wanted to do. Both were focused on the prioritization of wealth for themselves, not so much about wealth that was driven as a result of the continuity of government, which is necessary for the house, the governance of the house. And then finally, I think it touched on, you said, Ivan, about this issue of collaboration. Actually, that statesmen are not, the danger of one being, the top dog, the top G, as some would say, actually, is erroneous within the context of building a society, because it takes a society to build a society. And so we have to be collaborative. We have to recognize that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we all need one another's strengths to cover our weaknesses. I think of, I can't remember the term, but in Roman, I think I can't remember the term now, but in a Roman unit, there was this idea of, there was a way that the Roman unit was structured. And I actually think, I can't remember it now, but in 300, the film 300, there was a locking up of the shields in such a way that one man protected the weakness of another man. And it's those type of things that manifested the fruit of the Spirit that really help us to understand the kind of leadership that we need. It's like, are we there in this for the sake of the kingdom, protecting one another and being on the flank of one another in order to protect one another, so that we can build this thing that needs to be built? I'm thinking of in the days of Nehemiah, where there was building and protecting going on at the same time. Right. So when I think about the leadership of the future and the type of leadership that needs to emerge now, it's that first among equals, it's those patriots, it's those statesmen, it's the continuity of governance, and then it's the collaboration to protect the Lord's work wherever it is, rather than, in the wrong sense, as for me and my house will serve the Lord, but we don't care what another house is doing, which is really not going to be healthy for the advance of the kingdom. Yeah. And let's summarize on that. I've got one more question for us, which touches on education, and that I'd like us to go on. But is there anything, Ivan or Tim, you'd like to add following that?
Well, I think what you're describing is just completely juxtaposed to what Caleb responded to God when he came looking for Esau. He said, "I'm my brother's keeper." I think with a megaphone, God would say, "Yes, you are your brother's keeper."
Yeah. Don't build a society that is not based on being your brother's keeper. Yeah. So. And that's absolutely true. So this then, I think, links to the second part of what we're going to be talking about in the summit, which is this idea of what is it going to be like to shape, I'm just going to bring it up here, shaping the minds of the future citizenry. Interesting, isn't it? Because we started with this idea of there's an issue going on with what's in the mind of Christ and what we say is in the mind of Christ that isn't manifesting because we are adding to the mind of Christ these ideas of denominationalism and segmenting his society into caricatures which really don't exist. All right. But now we're talking about, we're going to be talking about shaping the minds of the future citizenry. And that starts with this question of what did Jesus mean by discipling the nations? So I know that we're not going to arrive at a complete solution today with the time that we have left, but I just wanted to get your insights into that, because I think we've built upon it really well by talking about community and the future of community and the ecclesia in that. But what do you think about what was Jesus in mind when he commanded the disciples about discipling the nations? Because like you said earlier, Ivan, that's not discipling about personal discipleship. It has a completely wider remit. So I'll start with you, Ivan, because you mentioned it earlier. What do you think?
I think nations being discipled implies an impact that's at greater level than one-to-one discipleship models. In order for a nation to be discipled, we have to think at a nation level. How does a nation, a complete nation, get discipled into the kingdom of God? So it drives even deeper questions. It asks a question such as, what are the key factors of decision making that represent how nations establish their course in the world? Who are the key influencers or decision makers in any nation? How does the ecclesia interact with those key influencers or decision makers? And for what ends does the ecclesia interact with those key influencers or decision makers? Or our other option, which I don't think is the one that Jesus wants us to consider, but typically is the response, does the ecclesia establish the kingdom government and not worry about influencing the nations of the world? By implication, does the ecclesia establish its own economy, educational system, communication systems, and everything else in the world, but separate from it? So those are more questions than responses. This idea that God is a nation builder and he's wanting us to disciple nations causes me to get out of my one-on-one discipleship model that's been traditionally taught and touted as the discipleship model to how does a nation get discipled?
Which is the appropriate question. That's the key thing here.
Yeah.
I want to, this is really important. I want to bring Tim in, but on this particular line of thought, Tim, because you and I know, and sure, Ivan, you're aware as well, when a lot of the teaching went out about the ecclesia, it was limited to this idea of how many, the ecclesia in the home. And so you had this ideology that was built around purely about the ecclesia's households. Now, the reason why I flagged that with yourself, Tim, because to come in on this, because it links to what Ivan said. What are the dangers of the, because I'm sure you'd agree with me, that's a limited view of the ecclesia.
Right,
the ecclesia is far greater than that. What are the implications of embracing that perspective on the ability to fulfill Jesus's mandate of discipling the nations?
Isolation is the first step towards confusion and failure. Elijah isolated himself and thought he was the only one. I'm the only one who hasn't bowed to Baal. Well, that was proven because the Lord said, I have 7,000 who haven't bowed. I think when you start going in these homes and locking yourself in and saying, this is just me and my four and no more, immediately you become isolated. And then you can also begin to go down paths that are not even anywhere linked to what the Lord intended when he said he would build his ecclesia.
Yeah.
I think the gathering of homes is one of those places. It's just a convenient place to recalibrate your purpose, to recalibrate what God has called you to do, to begin to get you focused on where you're supposed to be going, and then go out and leaven your community. Okay, from that place. And then you can come back, as you saw them happen many times in the New Testament. Well, while Peter was in jail, the believers were together. They were praying for him, and they had focus. When they assaulted the house of Jason, they had originally had focus there. They knew some of the things that they were to be doing. So what I'm saying is that we have to not use the gathering homes as a place of hiding, but a place of preparation and getting direction, purpose, and then getting out and going and doing.
So you agree then that the philosophy of the ecclesia simply being limited to how we gather at home actually, in effect, works against the mandate of nation building, which is the fundamental commission that the apostles were given. And actually, the ecclesia then has to have a wider remit than simply gathering at home, which then brings into the importance of assembling regionally in order to have that influence that Ivan's talking about. Because I think that when you're gathering at home, this is why I posed the question, because when you're gathering at home, well, you can limit it to personal discipleship then. because that's all it has to be, because I can invite people to my home and I can disciple them, and aren't I filling the Great Commission? But I think the challenge we have here is the context. Again, we're going back to what Jesus' mind, aren't we? Yeah.
Yes.
What did Jesus have in mind when it comes to building his society? Yeah. And it's bigger than your house. Now, I just want to say one more thing, Tim, and because I know that finger, so I know you've got something there to share.
Well, before I do that, technology is so much fun, and I don't want to lose this. And I'm about to run into some technical issues. So if you give me 2 seconds, I need to correct that. Keep going, and I'll be right back on. Do
you want me to? Okay, so I'll keep going then. So I think one of the things that I want to highlight is the fact that, if it was just down to being within your home or within that particular jurisdiction, then, well, at the end of the day, fundamentally in the book of Acts, when Jesus turns up and gives Peter a vision, and Peter struggles with that vision because it's going to take him out of the confines of what he's familiar with and force him to engage through Cornelius, and not just Cornelius and his household, but through Cornelius and his household into that wider society through which the nation would get discipled. And this is a thing that I think is, maybe we've not seen it because we've been activity focused rather than strategy focused, is sometimes we'll see an event or a situation or a circumstance in the book of Acts, and we'll literally stop at the door of that circumstance. Mm-hmm. We won't see what the opening of that door causes within that nation as a rippling effect, which is Jesus's nation building agenda. We just see, well, he went to Cornelius's house got saved, done, we're finished. That's the problem, I think, there. And I think what you were saying, Ivan, about recognizing that text is much bigger, it's wider in scope, opens itself up for us to have an expectation that says, okay, I may get sent to a house, but it's actually to save a city.
That's right. That's right. I mean,
and disciple a city.
Prophet Agabus being called to go and meet with Paul, who was killing all of his brothers and sisters. Like, what are you talking about, God? I'm not looking to die. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Paul is the guy that ends up, just like evangelizing half of the, that continent and other continents, right? So it is a much bigger agenda. It should provoke us to think, wow, God's about saving the whole world. I mean, it's not about saving my little neighborhood. And how does he do that? Not just saving, but drawing humanity into his kingdom agenda and into his kingdom. How does he do that? How does he what's my role in that strategy? What's the other part of the ecclesia? My brothers and sisters who form part of the ecclesia, what's their role? How do we complement each other's giftings and insight? What's the strategy that God wants to use in this particular region? So.
And I think what happens is when we see the strategy, then we can properly contextualize the tactics.
Yeah.
And I think what's been happening is we've been seeing the tactics as the strategy.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we build around the tactics and they become a method which becomes a formula that we say, right, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
that formula all over the place.
Exactly. So actually, if we can see the strategy that's taking place, which also is fluid, that's out of our control, that happens in a manner which we cannot in effect, I'll make up a word here, proceduralize. Okay, we just can't do it. We've got to formalize. We can't formalize it. But we see it as an opening. That's why I like in Revelation where it talks about, the Lord being the one that opens the door and shuts the door. In other words, that actually we can see these as openings into a greater stream of nation, of tribes, of tongues to introduce the work of nation building or building his nation.
Yeah.
Then we can see that it's outside the scope of our individual office or function and requires, as a result, others to be involved in the tactical work then we won't formalize it and package it in such a way that ultimately limits the kingdom being expressed through it.
Well, that's the ultimate danger, right? Because we traditionally, folks that have been selling books for years and making their livelihood off of those books would want to write a book about how kind of creating the formula for God's kingdom building activity, right? So
yeah.
And God has proven over and over again, he doesn't align with that strategy. He doesn't work within that strategy, and he'll topple the cart, and he'll push the door open, and he'll make us pivot right away to do the.
And you say that it's a really good example here, where when we look on the movement from the tabernacle to the temple to the synagogue to the ecclesia. That's a classic example there.
Yeah.
All right. From the tabernacle to the temple, it gives us the picture of nation building.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It gives us the picture of the authority, law, and government of God evolving from one to the other, because it's based upon the diktats of God bringing his people into a land and settling them in there and establishing the nation within that land. So it has value, really important value to it.
Yeah.
When we now get to the synagogue, it's the people trying to maintain the remnant of nationhood within being exiled into other lands, and it's about preservation.
Yeah.
Jesus now comes along, and he comes along at a time to a temple that has not been commissioned by God, because it's past Nehemiah and Ezra's period.
Mm.
It's a temple that has been fashioned according to the diktats of Herod, who is obviously influenced by the appeals of the Romans' occupation. And so Jesus is right to say, well, this hasn't been commissioned by me or the Father. So of course it's going to come down in 3 days, right? Yeah. It's not got the validity. It's not been certified. The commissioner has not commissioned it.
Right.
But actually, I'm going to commission something that ultimately, because I'm building with a brand new capital, because I'm building with a brand new resource, I'm using, typically I will begin to use a commodity that, or materials that is uncommon to what I've used before.
Yeah.
And will still need to be shaped off-site before it's assembled, because the rule of the temple building was that you shaped it off-site before you brought it together. So it will still need to go through that process, but its origins will be unlike what was old, what was in the prototype of old.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do that in a new configuration called an ecclesia.
Yeah.
That is not new to you, because it's in your region,
right,
in the Gentiles' world. But it is new to you because it's not familiar with the synagogue. It's not familiar with the temple. It's not familiar with the tabernacle. And yet the tabernacle and the temple will still exist from a configuration perspective and work itself out. But the manifestation is now this ecclesia.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting, isn't it, that in the religious minds, we return to the tabernacle, we return to the temple. But in the mind of Christ, it's the ecclesia that he wants to form.
Yeah.
How backward have we become?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are unable to see the future. And in fact, I sometimes wonder why, as Gentiles, because we are Gentiles,
yeah,
in the nature, as in from the history, I wonder if in some way, shape, or form, and this is just a thought, our struggle with the theocracy of God and the rule of God might come down to the fact that the institution that we are in is still trying to harken back to the old institutions that were mothballed. And maybe if it's because that's part of the reason why we will only find a suitable place in the ecclesia, because it was the ecclesia that was designed for us to find expression of the new kingdom. I don't know, what your thoughts? I've gone on a bit of a journey there, but what are your thoughts?
You have. I think in addition to what you stated, I think the challenge will be folks that are still have part of their mind and their thought process looking at the way the tabernacle functioned and the temple functioned, the synagogue functioned, and then when they come to the knowledge of the ecclesia, separate and glean away all those patterns from the past to be able to clearly see what the ecclesia is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like Tim referred to being detoxing and being detoxed from Egypt and Egypt's ways. Even though you're out in the desert, it takes a while to be detoxed from the patterns that we came out of, the tabernacle, the synagogue, the church system, the denominational system, to be able to see clearly what the ecclesia is called to.
Yeah, because the orthodoxy, much of our religions, whether we like it or not, whether we consider ourselves as non-denominational, like you said at the beginning, or not, we have come from an orthodoxy that is framed by the tabernacle and the temple.
Yeah.
It's seen in our buildings. The design of our buildings reflects this.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like we have, and I'm going to say it loosely, we have bastardized the designs that once were legitimate.
Yeah.
And created something that, in effect, is illegitimate, not because of the rudiments of what we've used in history, but because it's not in the intent of Jesus's mind.
Right.
And in Jesus's mind, what he sees on the earth was more in keeping with what his disciples would have seen, which they know would have offended the Jews of that period.
Yeah.
Because for them to talk about the ecclesia would have, which essentially is the Gentile world, would have hugely challenged the Jews of that period, because their mindset was the glorious temple and the glorious tabernacle.
Yeah.
So I definitely recognize the judicial elements of the temple and the tabernacle and the temple are still in effect.
Yeah.
But the way that Jesus is determined in his mind to manifest that on the earth, by in the context of his nation building agenda to reach not just the Jew but the Gentile, has been through the ecclesia.
Yeah.
And that is the fullest expression of where he feels his agenda can be fulfilled.
Yeah. I also think that when the ecclesia is functioning correctly, that every powerful structural leader will be challenged by that expression. I think of King Herod being challenged by the fact that the Magi come saying, "I'm looking for the King of the Jews," and King Herod starts to freak out about the possibility that there'll be another king that will be competing with his authority, his structure, his government. I think by drawing inference to that, I think that when the ecclesia is truly representing the kingdom of God, that every power that's of the nations of this world will be threatened by it. Not because the ecclesia is confronting those powers, but the ecclesia is manifesting the reality of the kingdom of God as a nation here on the earth. And we won't have. It's not about us taking over those nations. It's not about us, going into war against those nations. It's about establishing the kingdom of God on the earth through the ecclesia, and that establishment threatening the power systems of all the nations of the world. We won't have to threaten that. So.
Well, I'm going to have to close, and it's a shame that Tim had to go.
Yeah, he said he's back, but I don't know if he's waiting but.
He is. I will quickly. I've just seen him come in. Let's see if I can.
I'm back.
He's coming back. Hi, Tim.
We're talking about technology. I heard you saying, just down to word processing.
Yeah, it's bad.
Called a battery. That if you don't, I looked up and I was dead. And,
well, Tim, we went on a tangent, or I should say, I'll put my hand up. I went on a bit of a tangent, but I thought it was a really important tangent. The thing is, we need to close up now. And I think, which is a bit of a shame. I know. You can blame your battery for that. Was there something on your heart that you wanted to say before we conclude?
Well, I was hoping I'd be in on the last part of this, but really, I'm looking forward to the summit. I'm looking forward to those who will be a part of it. And I believe it is a timely summit. I think it's timely. I'm looking for those who are peaking. The interest is peaked, but they don't know what to do next. I mean, thank you for having me on. I know Ivan. say the same. And I know there's going to be others with Charles and
David
and hopefully Kelvin, and maybe even Andy. Just so that they need to see that this is not just the workings of a man, but this is a global thing that God is doing in the earth right now. And I'm just honored to be a part of this podcast, and honored that the Lord would allow me to be even a part of what he's doing in the earth today. And Battery, I rebuke you.
Ivan, your thoughts?
Thank you, Fred, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. This is, again, a conversation that is emerging across the earth. We're not the only ones having this conversation.
Right.
You'll find streams of this very similar content. I believe that it's God's timing as he looks at the earth and says, I am ready to move my agenda forward, and these are the people that I want to do it through. And so I've counted a privilege and an honor, and with great humility to be here and to serve with you guys in God's kingdom building agenda. So I do look forward for the Nation Builder Summit. I encourage you to come. Fred's got some exciting announcements to make about how we're going to start there, and then how the community is built as we go forward. So, and we'll have a great conversation. So please make plans to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for all of our subscribers and our future subscribers, I should say, or those that might jump onto this podcast and are interested in the conversation that we're having about the kingdom, about ecclesia, and about citizenship, I would simply just agree with Ivan and Tim as well, and just echo what they've said, that I think the Nation Builders Summit is something that definitely you should register for. So go to www.nationbuilders.vision, and really we'd love to see you there on the 24th of June, 2023, just to join us for a conversation where we're talking about, what our future communities look like, how do we shape the future of our education, how do we develop theocratic governance, and how do we grow commonwealth economies, all with one singular purpose, and that is to build the society that Jesus had in mind. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you once again, Ivan. Thank you, Tim. I'm sure there's going to be many more podcasts down the line. It's a shame that Kelvin couldn't join, but I'm going to try and get him in as well because he's part of the team. I'm also going to say as well to our subscribers, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button, but also join our other conversations on the Global Kingdom Conversation as well, which you can find us on YouTube. Just type in Global Kingdom Conversation and you'll find us there as well. So thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining our fireside talk about the kingdom. My name is Frederick Tobin, and I hope this podcast has been a blessing to you. If you'd like to continue to receive fresh insight into the kingdom, click the notification bell to follow us. For further information about the kingdom, visit our website, www.unlockthekingdomwithinyou.com, to download your free ebook. See you soon.